Hello everyone, this is part 3 video of NCERT as it is a review on environmental chemistry. So those who are looking at this video can take a look at the first and second part so that you will have the continuity. So in the previous parts, right, we talked about the atmospheric pollution, mainly the air pollution, divided into the tropospheric pollution and then stratospheric pollution. So now in this video we will talk about the water pollution, soil pollution and then strategies to reduce the pollution. So when you talk about water, right, we know it's essential for the survival of life. So when you look at the reason for the pollution of water, it is mainly because of the human activities. So we are the ones, primarily we are the ones who is responsible for the pollution of water. When you look at the water pollution, right, we can either classify this into point source pollution, where we can clearly identify what is the source from where the pollution is coming. Like for example, the municipal discharge pipe or the industrial discharge pipe, where you can clearly see that from that pipe end the water is getting into, or the pollutants are getting into the water bodies. That's what we call as the point source. If you are not able to identify such with such clarity, right, then we will call that source as what? Non-point sources, like agriculture runoff, the acid rain, storm water drainage. So all these things we call it as what? The non-points, where you cannot clearly, like if you talk about storm water drainage, it will come from streets, parking lots, lawns. We will not be able to clearly identify where the wastes are getting into water. So you'll see, like what are the various pollutants. If you look at microorganisms, right, they will come from mostly the domestic sewage. Organic waste, they will come from domestic sewage, animal excreta, even decaying of the animals and plants, right, all of them will give us the organic waste. Plant nutrients, they will come from the chemical fertilizers. Toxic heavy metals, they will come from the respective industries or the factories. Sediments, right, they will come from the erosion of the soil. Pesticides, basically the chemicals used for the killing of insects, fungus and weeds, etc. Insecticides and herbicides. Radioactive substances, they will come from the mining of radioactive materials like uranium, etc. Now one thing that we can look at here is the aspect of heat. So when we look at certain industries, we will use water for cooling. So in that process, water will actually absorb the heat. Water will absorb heat and thereby water will get heated. So we will see after a while what is the importance of temperature part. So generally when you look at the cold water, in cold water, right, more oxygen can be dissolved. In cold water we can see that more oxygen can be dissolved. But when we look at the hot water, right, the amount of oxygen that is dissolved in the hot water will be less. This idea, right, we will study in a chapter called as solutions in +2. But because of the decrease in the oxygen that is dissolved in water, if you heat the water means the oxygen that is dissolved, we call it as dissolved oxygen. Dissolved oxygen will be what? Decreasing. As a result of it, what happens? The aquatic life will not find sufficient oxygen for the survival. We will see what will be the effects of that. So if we look at what are the causes of the water pollution, right, we can look at pathogens, we can look at organic waste. So we'll just go one by one. Pathogens means what? These are basically these organisms that can cause harmful effects, disease causing organisms. Okay. So what are these pathogens we're talking about? Whether it is the bacteria or any of the other such microorganisms that can cause the harmful effects. So they will mainly come from the domestic sewage and animal excreta. Like if you see human excreta, right, it contains this very important one, E. coli. So we will talk about it in biology. If you are a bio student, means you will talk about it very much, E. coli and streptococcus. These two are basically present in the human excreta and they can cause a lot of gastrointestinal diseases. Like that, the pathogens basically they'll come from where? Domestic sewage and animal excreta. And this table we already seen. The other type of pollutants that can come into water is organic waste. Now organic waste are basically the leaves, grass, trash, all of it that is getting into water. Now when it is getting into water, even say for example we have excessive phytoplankton growth within the water, right? That can also be considered as what? Water pollution. Now the thing with the organic waste is these are all biodegradable, means they can be degraded. So when you have a large amount of this organic waste, that will require large population of biodegradable that bacteria that is responsible for it. And this bacteria, right, will decompose this organic matter using aerobic decomposition, means it will require oxygen. So where is the oxygen? The oxygen is the one that is dissolved in the water. So hence it will be consuming a lot of water for the degradation. Now if you look at the amount of oxygen that is available inside the water, right, it will be very less. Just to give us a picture, already we said, right, cold water we can have more amount of oxygen dissolved, but in cold water also the dissolved oxygen, right, can reach a concentration of what? Just 10 ppm, 10 parts per million. Just think about it. Whereas normal air, if you see the concentration of oxygen, right, it is what? 2 lakh ppm. Just compare. So the amount of oxygen that is there inside the water is very less. So even if you are having just some moderate amount of the organic matter, right, for the decomposition of that, the oxygen amount inside the water will get depleted by significant value. And this oxygen that is dissolved in water, right, it is required for the aquatic life. Like, fish, if the dissolved oxygen is going below 6 ppm, right, the growth of the fish will be inhibited. So wherever we have these numbers, right, numbers we have to pay attention. Now, how does this oxygen come into the water? It will either come through the atmosphere, means what? The oxygen in the air will be dissolved. So whenever we have a gas above the surface of a liquid, right, the gas will dissolve into the liquid. About this we will study in the same chapter, solutions. The other means of getting the oxygen is inside the water we will have the green plants, right. So those green plants, what they will do? They will be able to release the green plants are there inside the water body. They can release the oxygen by photosynthesis, because one of the products of the photosynthesis is what? Oxygen gas, right? But during the night time, what happens? Photosynthesis will not happen, and the plants will start doing the respiration. So they will also consume oxygen. So as a result, what we see is that the dissolved oxygen concentration, right, that will keep getting reduced. Now if you look at too much of organic matter inside the water, right, that will be consuming too much of the available oxygen, and this will be causing all those aquatic life which are dependent upon the dissolved oxygen, right, they will start dying. So if the oxygen levels are going below some value, right, when the sufficient oxygen is not available for the aerobic decomposition, the anaerobic bacteria will start coming in. The anaerobic bacteria, right, they will also be able to break down the organic waste, but they don't require oxygen. That's why we call it as what? Anaerobic. The thing is, the anaerobic decomposition will produce chemicals that will have a foul smell, and even they will be harmful for the human health. Aerobic decomposition will get less harmful. Anaerobic decomposition will get what? More harmful substances. So aerobic bacteria, right, they can degrade these organic waste, but the problem with this is what? They will deplete the oxygen, that is the dissolved oxygen amount in water. If you have aerobic degradation or decomposition, we will get less harmful substances, but the dissolved oxygen amount will go down. If you have anaerobic decomposition rate, that will give us harmful substances. Now to measure what is the amount of the organic waste that is there in water, right, we use this quantity called as biochemical oxygen demand. What is it? BOD. So the biochemical oxygen demand is basically, it is the amount of oxygen that is required by the bacteria to break down the organic waste. So in a given sample of the water that we take, the amount of oxygen required to break down the organic waste, that's what we call as the biochemical oxygen demand. So biochemical oxygen demand, right, it is basically what? It is a measure of what is the amount of organic waste that is there. BOD value less means what? We have less organic matter. BOD more means we have more organic matter. So look at this, no. So for the clean water, the BOD will be less than 5 ppm. Whereas if you have a highly polluted water, right, we can have even like more than 17 ppm also, we can have the BOD. The BOD measures what? What is the amount of oxygen required for doing the aerobic decomposition of the organic waste present. Lesser BOD means less pollutants are there. You can see clean water means we will have a value less than 5 ppm. More BOD means what? We have more pollutants like that. This is about the organic pollutants part. Now let's talk about the chemical pollutants. Chemical pollutants means what? Chemical substances, right? So you can have inorganic chemical substances. You can even have heavy metals like cadmium, mercury, nickel. Well, these metals, right, they cross some tolerance value, they will be very lethal to us. Like they can damage the kidneys, they can damage our central neural system, they can damage the liver also. So the chemical pollutants means we can have the inorganic chemical substances, we can also have heavy metals, we can have acids that will come from the mine drainage, because we will use acids for applications like leaching, etc. About this we will study in metallurgy. So leaching is a method of extracting the metal. You can even have salts that are coming from different sources, like in solutions chapter, right, we will see that when you are adding some salt like sodium or calcium chloride to water, right, the freezing point. So normally what is the freezing point of water? 0, right? The freezing point of that solution will be what? Less than 0. So we will call it as depression of the freezing point. So if you want to melt snow, right, for melting snow or ice in cold climates, what they do is they will spray some sodium chloride or calcium chloride. So the freezing point will get reduced, means what? You will see that the ice will actually melt. So all these salts, right, they will be of course water soluble and they will come into water. So we can have inorganic chemicals, we can have heavy metals, we can have acids, we can have salts, we can also have organic chemicals like petroleum, right? We would have seen, like sometimes we will get it in the news, oil spillage in ocean that can cause very serious damage to the, because it will form a complete covering on top of the water. So that will completely stop the oxygen exchange between the air and the water. That will be very lethal for the aquatic life. And even we can have the organic substance like pesticides that will run off from the agriculture land into the ponds or the nearby water bodies. We can have some industrial chemicals like PCBs. So whenever we have these abbreviations, right, we'll have to pay attention to it. What is it? Polychlorinated biphenyls, PCBs, right? They are used as cleansing solvent. Detergents, fertilizers, all these will come under what? The organic chemicals. So PCBs, right, they are even suspected to be what? Carcinogenic, means cancer causing. Some of these, right, will be biodegradable and some of them will not be biodegradable. Like if you look at the detergents that are used currently, right, they are all biodegradable, means when they get into water they can be degraded, like what we discussed. But again the problem will be what? The bacteria that is responsible for the degradation, they will be feeding onto it and they will be growing rapidly. So when they grow up rapidly, what happens? They will take up all the dissolved oxygen in water, and that will lead to what? Lack of oxygen, and that can cause the trouble for the aquatic life. The fish, fish or plants that are there inside, they will not be able to get sufficient oxygen. So this is about the organic pollutants. So even if you look at the fertilizers, right, they basically contain phosphates, and if these phosphates are getting into the water, they will enhance the growth because they are nutrients, right? They will enhance the growth of the algae. So you can see like this, we will have the covering, the bloom infested water. That's what we call it as. Okay, so this growth of this uncontrolled growth of algae, right, will cover the entire water surface. You can see here, and that will reduce the oxygen concentration in water. And when the oxygen concentration is reduced, means what? The organic waste will be degraded by using anaerobic conditions, and that will lead to foul smell, all these effects. So this bloom infested water will inhibit the growth of the other living organisms inside the water body because the oxygen availability will be what? Reduced. And this phenomena, right, where you see the nutrient enriched water bodies, they'll basically get a dense covering of this algae on the surface, which will be killing all the animal life and depriving them of the oxygen availability, right? Thereby the entire biodiversity in that water body will be damaged because it is taking up all the oxygen. So such a phenomena is what we will be calling as the eutrophication. So what is the eutrophication? It is the uncontrolled growth of algae on the surface of the water body. Why? Because of the phosphate fertilizers, and this will deprive the other aquatic life of the available oxygen, so they will all be dying inside. So this is about the eutrophication. Now when we look at the water bodies, right, yes, we need the concentration of specific ions within certain levels, so that they will be able to help our survival and sustenance. We will see, what are the international standards for drinking water. So if you talk about, we'll talk about the diagram in a while. If you talk about the fluorides, right, for the drinking purpose, the soluble fluoride should be having a concentration of up to 1 ppm or 1 gram per decimeter cube. Like, what is the reason for that? The fluoride ions, right, they will make the enamel on the teeth to become harder. So they will basically convert this hydroxyapatite, which is 3 units of calcium phosphate, 1 unit of calcium hydroxide, into the fluorapatite, which is 3 units of calcium phosphate and 1 unit of what? Calcium fluoride. But if this fluoride ion concentration is more than 2 ppm, right, it will cause brown mottling on the teeth. Like you can see here, what is it? The brown color mottling, right? And if it is going beyond 10 ppm, then it can cause harmful effects for the both bones as well as the teeth. So this is often seen in some parts of Rajasthan. So the first one, right, the brown mottling on the teeth, it is even found in the place where I come from. Okay, so it's district, Prakasham district in Andhra Pradesh. So we have the fluoride effect is what we call that. Okay, so when you have very high concentration of the fluoride ions, right, so we will get the effects on bones as well. Now the other metal or ion that we look at is the lead. So lead, right, is very lethal to us. Like if you have the concentration of lead which is beyond 50 ppb, this is not ppm, it is what? ppb. ppb means parts per billion. What is a billion? 10 power 9. The prescribed upper limit for the concentration of lead in drinking water is 50 ppb. It should not go beyond that. So where do we get it? When the lead pipes are used for the transportation of water, right, the lead will be coming into water. So the lead, once it is crossing the tolerance limit, right, it can cause damage to our kidney, it can cause damage to liver, reproductive system and all these things. Sulfate ions, right, the excessive value, like more than 500 ppm. See, as I said, right, all these numbers, wherever it is, we should pay just little bit more attention to it. If it is more than 500 ppm means it can cause a laxative effect. Laxative effect means the effects that are related to the bowel movement inside our body. Nitrates, the maximum limit for the nitrate is what? 50 ppm. If it is excess, then it can cause a disease called as methemoglobinemia. So this is also referred to as what? Blue baby syndrome. So what is this blue baby syndrome? So generally, blue baby syndrome can come from two reasons. So here we look at the reason which is associated with the nitrates part. So when you have high levels of, the way we will read it is methemoglobin. So normally in hemoglobin, right, we will be having Fe2 plus ferrous that will be able to combine with the oxygen, so that the oxygen will be transported to the tissues and other parts of the body. But when this Fe2 plus is getting connected to Fe3 plus, that is what we will be referring as the methemoglobin. So when the methemoglobin levels are increased, what happens is it will prevent the oxygen from being released to the tissues, because Fe3 plus will not be able to transport the oxygen as effectively as Fe2 plus. So thereby the oxygen availability for the tissues and the other parts of the body will be reduced. So this one, right, and this is associated with what? The blue color on the skin or different parts of the body. That's why it is called as what? Blue baby syndrome. So this is seen in villages of Romania and Bulgaria. So we don't want to get into what is the reason why it has come and all that, but what is it? It is basically because of the nitrates concentration in water crossing that threshold value. Now when you look at the other metals, right, we talk about iron. So iron, the maximum concentration value is 0.2, manganese 0.05, aluminium, then we have copper, then we have zinc and cadmium. So I mean, we will not usually get questions asking what is the maximum concentration of iron or something like that. We may not get questions like that. So this is about the other metals and their maximum concentration in terms of the international standards for the drinking water. So we're done with the water pollution. Next, the soil pollution part. So why the soil is getting polluted? So in India, we know that we are an agriculture economy. So if you look at our economy numbers, right, so most of the contribution for the economy will be coming from where? It will be coming from the agriculture and related industries. So we have agriculture, fisheries, livestock, cattle, okay, all these things. So when you look at the means of increasing the production in agriculture, right, one of the things that is often used is the chemicals, whether it is insecticides, pesticides for the pest control, herbicides for the weed control. So in a way they are supposed to increase the productivity of the crops, but we will discuss as we go into it. But the cause of the soil pollution, right, will be the use of those same chemicals, insecticides, pesticides and herbicides, right. They are the main cause of the soil pollution. So we will see. If you look at the pesticides, right, prior to the World War II, mostly the chemicals which are naturally occurring, like tobacco, right, tobacco, I mean, plants, they will be able to give us nicotine. So they are used as the pesticides. But after World War II, they found that DDT is very effective in controlling malaria and other insect-borne diseases. So they started using DDT also for the agricultural activities. But what they found is later the DDT has got very adverse effect on the human beings. So now we don't find people using the DDT. Even in India also we have banned it. Now what happens when you are using the pesticides? What are the pesticides? Basically these are the chemicals, and these chemicals, right, they are toxic and they will have ecological repercussions. So if you are using the same pesticide often, right, what would also happen is, so first time we can control the pathogens or the disease causing organisms, but if you use it next time, these organisms, right, because of their natural evolution, they will become resistant. The pests, they will become resistant to the chemicals. So once they become resistant, right, all these pesticides, they will now be ineffective. So initially while DDT was effective, right, after a while the organisms, they have become resistant to DDT, and once they have become more resistant to DDT, people started using, because once the DDT is not effective, they will start looking for what are the alternatives. They have started with aldrin and dieldrin. The thing is, if these toxins are like water soluble and biodegradable, right, they will come into water and they will get degraded by the biological activity. But these organic toxins that we're talking about, right, they are water soluble, they'll come into water, but they are non-biodegradable, means they will not get degraded. So if they are non-biodegradable, means what? They will persist through the food chain, and when they are transferred from the lower levels of the food chain to the higher levels, right, we will see that there will be an increasing concentration. The concentration of toxins, right, will be increasing for each subsequent level. We can see here, like, if you are going from the lower levels, for each level, right, this is a ballpark number that we can use. For each trophic level, the pollutant concentration will be increasing by how many times? 10 times. So from the aquatic plant level to the small fish to the large fish, large to the larger. So each level, right, the concentration of the pollutants will be increasing by 10 times. Now, once they have identified the biomagnification, what do we call it as? I mean, this is not, the word is not there in our NCERT, but this comes in, maybe in bio you might see this word. What is this phenomena called as? Biomagnification. The concentration levels of the pollutants will get magnified. Once they have observed the high persistence of these chlorinated organic toxins, DDT is what? Chlorinated compound, right? Scientists have come up with a new series of less persistent and more biodegradable products. We call them as what? Organophosphates or carbamates. But at the end of the day, what is it? Any chemical substance that you take, it can have some effects. So initially we might not be able to find it, but after a while, right, what scientists have found is, while they may be biodegradable, they can cause severe problems to our nervous system. Like they are acting as a severe nerve toxin, and they are even more lethal to the humans. So that is the reason why in one shot itself, people might not be able to find out what are all the effects that a chemical substance can cause to humans. Okay, so as a result of these organophosphates and carbamates, okay, so maybe you can just make a note of these two words. Even there were incidents of the agricultural field workers who have been severely affected, and that has led to the death of these workers also. So just like, we have the pests, insects also, right, they will become resistant to insecticides. So once insecticide is ineffective, people will start looking for what is the alternative. And if this goes on, right, there will be no end to it, because as they have seen DDT is ineffective, they have come to organophosphates and carbamates. Now we see that there are even more lethal issues with that. They are going for another variety of pesticides. So if this process continues, it will never be ending. Even the herbicides are what? For the weed control. So we use sodium chlorate and sodium arsenite. Okay, so again here also the same thing. While the herbicides, they will be able to show impact in terms of controlling of the unwanted weed, means what, unwanted plants that are growing along with whatever the agricultural produce. So to avoid them, we will use the herbicides. The thing is, most of these herbicides, whether it is a sodium chloride or sodium arsenate, right, they are also toxic to the mammals, but they are not as persistent as organohalides like DDT. Which means what, they can get decomposed, but they will also get magnified in the food web. Like, for every food chain level, they will get magnified. The concentration will get what, magnified. So if you look at some of these herbicides, right, they can cause issues like birth defect, and even when you talk about this is irony or whatever you call it. So some of the studies, right, that were done in particular cases, they have shown that the cornfields where the herbicides are sprayed, they are more prone to getting insect attack than the ones that are having the weed removal manually. So we are trying to control the weeds by using herbicide, but because we use herbicide, right, the field should not be more prone to insect attack. Then we will have to use the insecticide. So which means what, the entire field will be full of chemicals only. Now the thing is, when you look at the entire use of chemicals in agriculture, right, whether you talk about the pesticides or herbicides, they only represent a small part of the chemical pollution. Other than that, we also have like the regular chemical industries, right, like various chemical industries are there. When you look at the manufacturing process and their emissions, all these things also will be able to release the chemicals in one or the other form into the atmosphere. The industrial waste, right, is basically anything that we are able to get out of the industry as a discharge. So it can be a biodegradable, it can be non-biodegradable. Biodegradable means what? You have the waste coming from the cotton mills, food processing unit, paper mills, textile, all this will be what? Biodegradable. Non-biodegradable, right? This is basically the fly ash that is coming from the thermal power plants, or the slag. So we will learn about it when you go to the metallurgy. Calcium silicate, all these compounds will be present in the slag. Slag that is coming from the iron and steel plant, from the blast furnace especially. The industries that are manufacturing aluminum, zinc, copper, they can produce mud and tailings. So all these are what? The non-biodegradable. Even some fertilizer industries, right, they can produce gypsum. What is gypsum? CaSO4 2H2O. So all these are what? The examples of the non-biodegradable. Now these hazardous waste, right, when they are just let into the surrounding, they can cause serious damage. Like when you talk about the industries such as metal industry, chemical industry, drug, pharma, dyes, pesticide, rubber, wool, all these industries, right, they can let out these harmful chemical substances, and they will be able to cause serious damage to the surroundings. Now when you look at the disposal, right, of these industrial waste, if it is not done in a suitable manner, then this can cause damage to the environment. So how do we dispose them? Before even that is disposed, right, there should be an approach so as to look for alternative ways of reducing the waste. Like for example, the fly ash and slag from the steel industry. It can be used by the cement industry as a raw material. Like the emissions or the discharge from one industry can be used as a raw material elsewhere. So when you are able to find out such alternative paths, we can reduce the overall discharge that is happening from the industries. But even if there is no such alternative path, before the industrial waste is discharged, it should be removed of all the harmful or really hazardous substances. We'll talk about it, how the removal can happen and all that. So if you see some industries, right, these toxic waste, they are usually destroyed before the industrial waste is discharged. They will be destroyed by what we call as controlled incineration. Incineration means what? It's like you do a burning of the substance in a controlled environment. So where small quantities of these will be burnt along with the factory garbage. So the use of industrial waste for alternative utilization, like the one that we discussed, fly ash and slag used in the cement industry, or the controlled incineration before we release the industrial waste into the environment. So these methods, right, are very much required to reduce the effect of industrial waste on the environment. Now the recycling part, right, is one other very important development. Like if you look at the plastic waste, we can obtain fuel from that. Now one thing is we can call it as a green fuel because it will have no lead content. And not only that, it is found that this fuel, right, is having a high octane number. So you learn about what is the octane number in our hydrocarbons. So a higher octane number, right, is basically indication of what? More efficient fuel. Even if you look at the use of plastic, the plastic can be recycled, and we can make some cloths from the plastic waste. So they are just saying the textbook is printed quite some time before, but today we have technology where the cloths means not the usual cloths, but certain like you would have seen people wearing during the corona time, they will wear the PPE kit and all that. So how they are all made? They are made from the recycled plastic and all that. Okay. Now in India, right, if you look at some of our problems can be addressed if you are able to find a clear recycling solution. Already there are attempts that are being made. Like if you have the power cut issue, at the same time the issue of the garbage. In most of the places you might see the piles of the garbage. Of course, in our cities we have the municipal cleaning system where they will remove all the garbage and all that. But if you look at on one side we have the garbage that is piling up from the domestic waste. Other side we have the power cut issues. So if you are able to find a technology that can actually produce electricity from the garbage, right, there are already some technologies that have been developed. So this technology can actually use whatever the garbage from where we will first remove the metals, plastic, glass, paper and all that. After removing it, the remaining part of the garbage can be cultured with bacterial species. So whereby we can produce the methane. So typically we will call it as what? The biogas. And this can be used for the production of the electricity. And even the remaining part of the the discharge rate can be used as a manure. So agriculture we can use it as a manure, and the biogas produced can be used as the fuel for the production of electricity. So this way we will be able to obtain one, the manure for the fields and agriculture, and also we will be able to obtain clean form of energy, which is the electricity. Okay, so like that the recycling, wherever there is a technology, it will be able to considerably reduce the environmental pollution. I mean, so if you are interested, you can just look at Israel, right, is one country where, of course, they don't have access to the natural water bodies in terms of river. Of course, there are rivers also, but you don't find the rivers of good water quality there. So they have found really good ways of one, getting water by using desalination plants from the seawater, and a really good recycling processes where they can reuse the water. So whatever the waste water that is coming from the towns, the domestic waste, that will be processed and then used for the agricultural fields for the cultivation. So that way, you will be able to recycle the water. I'm just giving an idea of how the environmental pollution can be reduced. So provided there are these recycling technologies that are developed. But of course, one thing is when it comes to the practical implementation of it, right, the cost effectiveness will come into picture. Now, once we have gone through all these three major types of pollution we have seen, right, we talked about the air pollution or atmosphere, then we talked about the water, then we talked about the solid, and then we talked about what is the industrial pollution that can be caused by the industries. One thing that we all agree is that, okay, the environmental pollution should be stopped, or rather, no, we should do whatever is possible in our capacity to minimize the environmental pollution, whether it is about controlling of the air pollution, or controlling of the water pollution, controlling of the soil pollution, or controlling of the industrial waste from polluting our neighborhood. Like if you talk about the Swachh Bharat Abhiyan, right, which is Clean India Mission. This is basically launched by the government of India so as to make effort in a direction where all of us as Indians, right, we will be a part of this mission to make our neighborhood as clean as possible. So we'll talk about the Swachh Bharat Abhiyan, but before that, the waste management, right? We'll talk about the waste management. We talk about the collection of the waste, and then segregating the waste, and then disposing them. There are three activities. So if you look at the waste management, it has to be collected and then segregated. Segregation means what? We have two types of, one is biodegradable, non-biodegradable, and the disposal rate will be different. A non-biodegradable, we might not be able to just like the dispose of, because it will be persistent, it will stay in that place. So we have to have a different method for the disposal of the non-biodegradable. Okay, so we'll talk about it. The improper disposal of the waste, right, is a major reason for the environmental degradation. Like I said, if you have a non-biodegradable and then we just throw it outside, a plastic cover, that will be just like that there forever. So the disposal is a very key aspect of the waste management. So now we'll talk about the Swachh Bharat Abhiyan first. So Swachh Bharat Abhiyan, under this scheme, we have two initiatives. One is the urban Swachh Bharat Mission Urban, and the other is the Swachh Bharat Mission Gramin. In urban, we have aims like making sure that we are free from open defecation and achieving 100% scientific management of the solid waste. In Gramin, we have targets like improving the general quality of life, promoting cleanliness, hygiene, and eliminating open defecation. So even the mission has target of universal sanitation by October 2nd, 2019. I don't want to talk about whether we have achieved it or not 100%, but yeah, so there have been efforts by the government to make sure that we all will feel a part of this responsibility. Now talking about the waste management again. So if we have the waste just like that dumped, one, it will cause inconvenience for us in terms of moving around, and the other hazardous effect, the foul smell that will come from because the waste can be, organic waste, it can be inorganic waste. You can have various types of waste. If you just like that throw the waste on the sideway or roadside, it can cause us a lot of harmful effects. So that is the reason why you would have seen, if you happen to be from Chennai, you would have seen there are a lot of initiatives that Chennai municipality has taken. Even these battery vehicles that people use to go to even small streets for collecting of the waste. So if you have a big lorry, you might not be able to get into small streets, and these disposal bins, right, you may not be able to keep in every nook and corner, but because of the small vehicles that have been introduced, right, so these disposal bins, they are now available in even small streets or narrow lanes also. They have kept these disposal bins so that people will not just throw the waste like that. They will be able to put them in that disposal bin. And of course, nothing can be possible without the work of the people who are involved in this. So we have municipal workers who are at it in terms of collecting this and then taking it to the segregation place and then finally also disposing it off. So when you look at the domestic waste particularly, they will be collected in the way I mentioned, right, they will be collected in small bins, okay, so which are then transferred to the community bins by the municipal workers or private workers. Community bins are basically like the large ones. The community bins, they will carry them to the disposable site. At that site, the garbage will be sorted out into biodegradable and then non-biodegradable. So nowadays, in some places, right, you will see generally when you have the disposal bin in our neighborhood, you will see there will be two bins. One is for the bio and other is for the non-biodegradable. The non-biodegradable materials, right, like plastic or glass or metal scrap, etc., they will be sent for the recycling because you can't just dispose them out like that. The biodegradable, we can deposit them in the landfills. Landfills means, you will dump all the biodegradable waste into a place, and after a while you can see that all these will be converted into compost that can be used for the applications or that can be used in the agriculture and cultivation. That's basically the organic compost. Now if we don't collect this domestic waste in the garbage bin and you just let it get into the sewer, what happens? One, it can clog the sewage system. And second thing is some of these non-biodegradable waste like polythene bag, metal scraps, right, they can choke the sewers and cause the inconvenience. They will create a blockade or something. And even if some of them are eaten by the animals, right, they can even kill them. Like the polythene bags, if the animals are swallowing them, right, there is a danger of the animals getting even killed also. So the domestic waste, it is on us, all of us, that no, we should not just dump it in whatever place we find, but we should dispose them on the disposal bin, so that the municipality workers, they will do the rest of, because nobody is asking us to finally go and do the last level of disposal, right. So our role is basically to keep them in the appropriate disposal bin, not just throw them around in our surrounding, because at the end of the day it will cause inconvenience to us only at the beginning, and on a larger level it can cause inconvenience to all the other people also. So these waste, right, they should be properly collected and also properly disposed. So if you are not doing it properly, the poor management, right, can cause health problems. It can even lead to epidemics because of the contamination of the groundwater. So when you have the waste that is not disposed properly, then it can cause hazardous effects on people who are involved in the waste collection and the disposal. So we have to make sure that whoever is handling these waste, right, they should have proper protective things, whether it is a glove or the other coverings, etc., so that they will not get exposed to any of these hazardous substances. Okay, so now moving on to the other part of it. So there is an new idea. I mean, it's not so new, but yeah, so the new idea is using our idea of science and technology to come up with alternative means of doing things. Like if you talk about India as a self-sufficient country in food, right, like we have achieved it only in the later part of the 20th century. So in the even early part of 20th century, right, we used to import wheat from USA. So we used to import wheat from the USA and so on. Like we are not a self-sufficient country in terms of the food, but we have achieved this by the use of fertilizers, pesticides, insecticides, chemicals, and also exploring improved methods of farming using tractor and all these things. Quality of seeds, hybrid seeds which will have a high yield, irrigation methods. So all these things have helped in making sure that our country is now self-sufficient in terms of the food. But if we keep on going for the excessive use of these fertilizers and pesticides, right, that can result in the deterioration of the soil quality. It can cause water pollution, it can cause even air pollution. Already we have seen that. The concept of green chemistry is this: just because there is a problem, we can't just stop everything and go back. We can't again import the wheat from USA, right? Probably if today India were to become dependent on any other country for food, we will be in a very dire situation. And thankfully it will not also happen in future because of continuous improvements that are happening in our agriculture. So we are seeing that in certain states more and more land is now brought under the irrigation. So we are having the total land that is irrigated, that value is increasing, and the agriculture produce is also increasing. But how do we reduce the damage that is happening to the environment, the environmental deterioration, right? How do we reduce it? So for this we have to come up with using our existing knowledge of the principles of chemistry and other parts of science. We have to come up with techniques or ways of reducing the adverse effect on the environment. That's what we call as the green chemistry principles. So green chemistry process, right, is basically it will bring about minimizing the pollution or deterioration of the environment. So if we have byproducts that are generated during any process, right, if they are not used gainfully, what will happen? They will be adding to the environmental pollution. If any process is happening like that, we have to dispose of the byproducts. Then what will it will be causing? One is it will be causing environmental pollution. It will be environmental unfriendly, and also it will be cost ineffective, because if you are not able to use up something, means it will be cost ineffective. Like what we discussed, right? The example of fly ash and slag is used as a raw material in the cement industry. So thereby it will make it cost effective. So the waste generation as well as the waste disposal, both are economically unsound practices, because you are spending money to generate this byproduct waste and not using it economically in a viable manner, and you have to spend again money to dispose this off. Whether you do incineration or any of the disposal methods, we will have to still spend some money. So the idea of green chemistry is this: we will have to utilize our existing knowledge so as to reduce the chemical hazards that will come as a part of our development activities. That is the main basis or foundation of the green chemistry. So how do we achieve it? We will have to see. Like say for example, if you talk about any chemical reaction, right? If you can have reactants fully convert into useful and environmental friendly products, and for achieving it, we should not use methods that are again creating harmful effects. The methods also must be what? Environmental friendly. If you do this way, then there will be no chemical pollutant that will be introduced into the environment. That is what will be the ideal chemical reaction that we are looking for. So which means what? We are looking for end products that are coming up to almost 100% yield. For this, what we need to have? We need to have optimum conditions in terms of temperature, pressure and all these things that we have studied in our equilibrium. But as you know very well, this 100% will not be possible. So wherever it is possible, try to minimize the effect of the wastes. That is the context. So if you are performing a reaction which is going to liberate large amount of heat, this can be done in the aqueous medium. Why? Because water as such has got a high specific heat capacity, and water also is less volatile. So what happens? We will not have any vapor emissions, and also water is what? Cost effective. It will be devoid of any carcinogenic effect and all these things. So if you use water as a medium, right, it will be able to take in all the heat and it will reduce any effects of the vapors of metal vapors or metal oxide vapors when they are coming into atmosphere, right, that can cause harmful effects. So all those things can be avoided if you are using the reaction to be happening in the aqueous medium like that. So talking about some specific examples, right, for the dry cleaning of the clothes, tetrachloroethene was earlier used as the solvent, but this is found to contaminate groundwater, and also it is suspected to be carcinogenic. So that is the reason why today, right, we use liquefied carbon dioxide. It will not contaminate the groundwater, and also this is not carcinogenic. So this way we are able to achieve the dry cleaning of the clothes, but by using a different substance which is causing less harm. Now even the hydrogen peroxide usage, right, in laundry, this is used for the bleaching of the clothes in the laundry process. So normally if you are using chlorine gas for the bleaching, right, it can cause harmful effects, but if you are using hydrogen peroxide, it will be able to give us the entire process can be done by making use of a lesser amount of water, and thereby it will be about a better process, because for the laundry we are requiring less amount of water. So again, for the bleaching of paper, right, chlorine gas was used earlier for the bleaching of paper. Nowadays we are using hydrogen peroxide with a suitable catalyst. So this will be able to again reduce the use of chlorine, which can be causing harmful effects. Now the synthesis of the chemicals also, right, as we already discussed, we are looking for what? A process which can give almost 100% product without any byproducts. Like if you want to prepare ethanol commercially, right, now it is prepared by a one-step method, just oxidation of ethene in the presence of an iron catalyst in the aqueous medium, right. It will be able to give us what? Almost 90% yield. We can even use palladium or copper as a catalyst. So this will be able to give us just one product, that's it. We will not get any byproducts. So this way we will not have any disposal issues. So like this, for the commercial method of preparation of different chemical substances, right, now there is more preference for the methods where we are able to just get one single product. Now there is also what we call as the green solution to the cleaning of the water. What is this? The powder of kernel of the tamarind seed. You will find the kernel of the tamarind seed, right? That powder. So normally, when you look at it, it can be used as a substance that can be cleaning the water. So the municipal or industrial wastewater, right, that can be cleaned by using the powder of the tamarind kernel. It will be non-toxic, it will be biodegradable and also cost effective, because this powder, right, is usually discarded as the agricultural waste. The tamarind seeds are generally considered as what? We don't eat tamarind seeds, right? That will be generally taken as what? Agricultural waste. Now currently what we do is we will use alum for the treatment of water, for the removal of turbidity of water, right? We will use what? Alum. Alum is what? Potassium aluminum sulfate hydrated. So we talked about this in the hydrogen and its compound chapter. So the alum, right, when we are using it for the removal of turbidity of water, it can increase the toxic ions that are present in water. Look at this, aluminum ions are toxic. So by using this powder of the tamarind seed kernel, we are able to have a more environmental friendly process. We are not going to get harmful ions into the water, and at the same time we will be able to remove the turbidity of the water. So basically the green chemistry idea, right, is what? It's a means of finding cost effective approach which will involve the reduction in the material, energy consumption and waste generation. So this is what is the broad, idea of the green chemistry. So just because we are talking about reducing environmental pollution, it is not like we are not at all bothered about the cost. It is still going to have a cost implication. Like you see, if you are using, instead of alum, we are using kernel of the tamarind seed, powder of that, it will be cost effective. Even we see that one step synthesis methods also will be cost effective. Okay. So this is about the environmental chemistry, and this part, right, is more talking on not just about what is the soil and water pollution that is happening, but also we have learnt about what is it that we all of us have as our responsibility in making sure that we don't add to the deterioration of the environmental condition. So we will always act in a way where we will support for the healthy practices of the green chemistry. Okay, so all the very best, and we will see in the next video.